chillin', serial killing, pre-cold villains on the mic, got you reeling. 5-star rated from the floor to the ceiling. If you catch a 1-star, no time for feelings. Got a demon DJ on the ones and twos, by the name Beelzebub, so don't get confused. So grab a seat by the fire, roast them all over two, and prepare to hear the legend of the Straight Chillin' Crew.
What up, nerds, and welcome to another infinite episode of Straight Chilling, the weekly horror movie review show where you chill and we slice, dice, and chop up yet another horror movie. My name is Bob. I'll be your host for the evening. This is episode 408, recorded Sunday, January 29th, 2023. Tonight we're talking about the latest from your boy, Brandon Cronenberg. The movie is Infinity Pool. Before we get into it, let me introduce everyone else on the show. First up, calling in from Washington, D.C., we got our boy, Randu. What's up, man?
I have a daddy kink.
Yes, a Daddy Berg kink, I imagine. Is Randy muted? At least we speak to us through your bumps exclusively.
Randus, we can't hear you.
It is not in the file.
It's just
Testing.
There it is. There it is.
Okay, well, what the fuck?
not editing that out.
I mean,
Okay,
yeah,
well, hi, that's my intro. I deserve everything that comes with that. So here we go.
What up,
Let's
Randy?
continue.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for coming. Next up, calling in from my immediate left, we got your boy Soju. What's up, man?
Oh, what up, bitch, boy? The kinks of the father have become the kinks of the son. Stains.
It's a long name. It's too long. I don't like it.
No, I was going to go with peer pressure stains, too, and pressure you into, going and doing some nasty shit, Bob, but,
It's not.
I mean, that's just a normal
dissimilar.
day for you two.
That's really our friendship. That's how
That's
it works.
the dynamic.
Do it, Bob. Don't you want to be cool, Bob?
Yeah, okay. Sure.
Let's go kill someone, Bob. Come
Yeah,
on.
okay. Yeah, I'll do that. Sure.
Incriminating and awesome.
Last but not least, calling in from the very first time, all the way from the West Coast, we have our friend Rachel from the Zombie Girls Podcast Network. Welcome, Rachel. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for joining. I'm so excited to talk to you guys tonight about a movie that gave me a mommy kink. So,
Oh, yeah. I doubt you're the
abound.
only one.
Kinks
Some
for all.
awakenings happening this weekend.
I'm awake.
yes.
Sexually.
Yeah.
I've never been more awake.
That's too awake.
I mean, turducken genitals will do that, but I don't want to spoil things.
You fit right in,
Oh,
Rachel.
yeah.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Meat within meat. Within meat. Oh, shit. This is going to be a wild discussion. Before we get into it, though, Rachel, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and the Zombie Girls at?
Sure. You can find me and my cadre of zombie ladies on the Zombie Girls Podcast Network. We have a handful of different podcasts. So whatever your vibe is, we've got something for you. We've got More Deadly, which is focused on women identified directors who are covering it or working in the horror genre. There's Stream Queens, where basically we just kind of get a little drunky and talk about horror movies that you can stream on the internet. And then, of course, Zombie Girls, where we talk about film to feminist, from a feminist perspective to varying degrees of success. But yeah, come check us out at zombiegirls.com, or you can follow us on all the social media platforms. You can find us. Just get in the Google, type it on in, come check us out.
Get inside the Google, crawl in there, and check out the Zombie Girls. And that's GRRLZ, right? Girls. Yeah.
Yes, think Riot Girl. Yeah. Mhm.
There you go. Yeah.
There we go.
Check them out everywhere you get your podcasts. Before we get into the movie review, let's tackle just a little bit of housekeeping here. So at the time of this episode dropping, it's going to be February 1st. That means our February poll has closed. It looks like Slumber Party Massacre, the OG, is going to take it.
There were some
changes.
slight changes,
Yeah.
though. So anything's possible.
Raw was climbing the charts a little bit.
Some people specifically mentioned they were changing their votes.
Yes. Yeah. So, you got a couple days left. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see when the mail-in comes in and just count everything as it comes.
That's what we do here at Straight Chilling. Mail in your votes. That does mean this is dropping on the first of a new month, so we have a new poll posted on our Patreon website. Our March poll theme is It's a Scream Baby. We got 3 Scream movies for you to vote between: Scream 2, Scream 3, and Scream 4.
Bob, you finally got your poll, my guy.
Wow. Congrats, man.
It's a win, no matter what.
Yeah.
You've been after this particular poll for some time.
Yeah, Bob was pushing for this big time when Scream 5 was coming. 5 Cream was coming out last year.
Now we got 6 Scream.
We denied him, so I felt bad this time.
You always do.
Yeah.
You don't feel bad.
We got to keep you wanting, Bob.
Yeah, that's not something we're buying.
Yeah. Get your votes in before the end of February. We'll see what Scream sequel we're talking about in March. Speaking of Patreon news, we dropped a brand new mini cast last Friday. It is on Sick. Sick is a Peacock slasher. Slam your eyeballs into that if you want.
I heard
to do
that
so.
as an adjective as you spoke it. Like, it's a 6. I was like, oh, what's so sick?
So sick.
Giving
the movie.
giving up your review right in here in the intro.
It's a sick movie called Sick.
That's the Kevin Williamson movie, right? Sticking with that Scream lineage.
Yeah, it definitely has that Scream sort of vibe. That setup is definitely there. If you want to hear the remainder of my thoughts on that, check it out over on Patreon. We've got like 90 mini casts. We add to that every single month. So if you want a little extra straight chilling in your ears, check us out over on Patreon. I think that's all I got. Do you guys have any housekeeping you want to mention?
I was going to do one more shouts outs because on our last episode it hadn't come out yet, but shouts outs to G Baby over at Waxing the Porpoise. They featured him and Steve featured me last week talking about Prisoners, which is a really good thriller kind of film starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Hugh Jackman, and that was a long episode. If you want to hear us talk for 3 hours on Prisoners, like double the time of the film, then check out Waxing the Porpoise podcast. And that is all my housekeeping, surprisingly.
Bob, how about you? You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
His house is clean.
Let's get into the main event. We're talking about Infinity Pool, and we're kicking it off with the back of the box.
What's on the back of the box?
Bob, did you pre-order this box?
I don't think you can yet. Otherwise, I would have.
I know.
The unrated version is in theaters currently. I believe it got a wide release, so it's pretty easy to track down. There's definitely gonna be a disc of an unrated version that I believe has just actual penetration in the cut, from what I
Nifty.
understand.
Was
So-
there not? Yeah, okay.
I don't know.
What's there not? I mean, if you caught it, then you definitely you surpassed
got
your
a keen
epileptic
eye.
fit to do it.
Yeah.
I know penetration when I see it. This is the latest and greatest from your boy Brandon Cronenberg, the progeny of David Cronenberg. It's got a runtime of 1 hour and 57 minutes. It stars a whole host of folks. You got Alexander Skarsgard, Mia Goth, Cleopatra Coleman, Dujas Sepkik. Probably mispronounced that, and I apologize.
you nailed it.
I
Nailed
apologize. The plot synopsis brought to you by IMDb is as follows. James and M. Foster are enjoying an all-inclusive beach vacation in the fictional island of Tolqa when a fatal accident exposes the resort's perverse subculture of hedonistic tourism, reckless violence, and surreal horrors. This is a brand new release, of course, so it's a first-time watch for all of us. Would you recommend people check this movie out? Rachel, since you are our guest this evening, why don't you kick us off? Would you recommend Infinity Pool?
Yes. I mean, yes, with some limitations, because this is what I would refer to as an ordeal of a movie. It's an ordeal that I personally enjoy. I'm a huge Brandon Cronenberg fan. I loved both of his previous films. So I went into the screening with like a mixture of trepidation and like real excitement. And I shouldn't have worried. this guy has blazed his own trail, like, and he owns the entire lane. And this, I think this might be the best example of the thing that he's doing, which I've seen described in some places, not as body horror, but as soul horror, which I think feels accurate. So yeah, if you liked his other films and you like challenging movies, this is a big recommendation for me.
Awesome.
Right on.
Juice, what about you?
Yeah, I would recommend people check this out. It's not one of those films I would say is absolutely necessary for a theater watch, but as of now, it's not streaming. So if you want to watch it right away, I recommend it. If you're really big into supporting, like the theater experience as well, then definitely check that out, because this is an original horror, a great director, and so it's definitely worth support in that way as well. It is sexual and violent, as you would maybe guess from a Cronenberg, but not like, it is different than David Cronenberg, but I think it is pretty consistent. At least I haven't seen Antiviral, but I would say it's consistent with Possessor. So if you enjoyed that, I think you will absolutely enjoy this. Bob, would you recommend people check out Infinity Pool?
Yes, I would. Whenever I bought my ticket this morning, I watched the movie this afternoon, actually, early this afternoon, so I've only had a few hours to ponder upon it, but I walked up to the ticket taker, and she scanned my ticket, and she went, "Oof, get yourself ready for that one." I've never had that happen. I was like, "Oh, damn, okay." But yeah, if you're in for a movie like that, something that you have to sort of like steel yourself, it's a really interesting, entertaining, wild movie that does feel reminiscent to David Cronenberg's work, but not like it's totally riffing on or stealing from. It does feel sort of itself, which is pretty great. I recommend it for sure. Randy, what about you?
Yeah, I would also recommend. It's definitely a heavily caveated recommendation. You got to be ready for hypersexualization. You got to be ready for, man. I don't even have the laundry list of potential trigger warnings and so on in front of me. But just go in there with the knowledge that it is designed to make you feel weird, and you're not going to have a normal day right after watching this. You're going to need a minute.
Surprisingly enough, it hit one of my triggers and one of Bob's triggers.
Oh, yeah.
We're like,
Aww.
I was warning Bob in the theater. I was like, Bob, oh, here
I
he
recoiled
comes. And then I got mine, and I was like, what the fuck?
Serves you right.
We'll bring those up soon enough.
Yes. Trigger warnings abound, but yeah, go watch it. Treat yourself, I guess. To infinity.
I say
But
yes.
not too much.
I think it's a treat. I think it's an interesting
It's a
treat.
weird
It's right.
treat.
It's right up my alley.
Yeah. Sure.
For context, you guys, if you have questions, I did see the uncut version. So
Oh,
I'm
Yeah.
not sure which version I saw.
Well, if you saw it
So-
in the theater, it was edited.
Okay. So you saw the penetration, huh, Rach?
so the thing that they cut was not penetration. It was
okay.
actually a hand, like a very close up hand job and
Oh.
completion. When I came out of the screening, I went on our Discord and was like, let's play a game. Name a bodily fluid and I'll tell you if it's in Infinity Pool. The answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
They got them all.
There was a nice close-up shot of semen hitting the ground.
In my cut.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, you got to see its
Very
origin
cinematic.
story.
Yeah.
I see.
I need to know where that semen came from. For sure.
the answers, they just aren't there.
They're not there. That sounds like a hearty recommendation from pretty much all of us. Let's go ahead and drop that spoiler warning and get into the rest of the movie.
Spoiler warning.
Bob, you just watched this movie. Did you have time to type up a plot synopsis?
Yeah, I got a short one.
All right, give it to me.
This is going to be great.
Bob has
I
a-
smell like
all the-
popcorn. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I want all the dirty details.
I glazed
But Bob's
over
gonna
a lot.
say it in the cadence of your like fucking health teacher from middle school.
You just Never mind. Yeah, so here's roughly the plot of Infinity Pool. Novelist James Forrester and his wife Em spend time at a seaside resort at the fictional island of La Tolqa. They meet another couple who join them to leave the safety of the resort and have dinner on the beach. They do so, and upon driving back, accidentally run over and kill a local. Their new friend Gabby insists they cannot call the police as they will be raped and murdered if they do so. The following morning, James is arrested and told the penalty for his crime is death. He is to be murdered by the man he ran over's firstborn son. That is unless he pays a handsome sum for a duplicate of himself to be made and murdered in his place. He pays, and his duplicate is murdered, and he and his wife watch. Em is horrified and wants to leave for America immediately. James is secretly interested in what he has seen. He hides his passport, claims to have lost it, and encourages his wife to leave without him. James extends his stay and runs into Gabby and her husband, Albin, again, who introduce him to a small group of wealthy individuals who have broken the law and witnessed doubles of themselves murdered. They return annually to break the law and repeat this process. They convince James to break and enter, steal, torture, engage in orgies, take local drugs, and abuse the waitstaff and various other crimes. One night, James is tricked into brutalizing a mass clone of himself. When it's revealed by his newfound friends to be himself, he has then had enough. He tries to leave the island. He's abducted from the bus he's on, and Gabby says she's not a fan of his book at all, but finds him to be very pathetic. He tries to escape and gets shot in the leg. He soon collapses on a farm, hallucinates, and wakes up. When he walks outside, he's confronted by Gabby and friends once again. They say he must kill a duplicate of himself to complete his transformation. He refuses and drops the knife that they give him, wherein he is attacked by his clone, and he beats his clone to death with his bare hands. Gabby then wipes some blood on her breast and lets James suckle at her teat as she comforts him. The following morning, they all head to the airport and discuss their work weeks ahead, as well as various mundane tasks. James ends up not boarding the plane and instead returns to the beachside resort and sits on a chair on the beach as the rainy season rolls in, and he is drenched all alone. Roll them
Boy,
credits.
when you line up the facts just like that, it just really leaves a picture in your head.
Clinical. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I feel like I need to update my Tinder profile. I learned some things. So I've listened to the show quite a bit, but I've never watched it before. And I'm just going to put this out here. Ladies, find yourself a man who looks at you the way Soju looks at Bob during his It was just soul gaze.
You wrote that plot synopsis so good, Bob.
We are life partners.
I wish.
Speaking of bodily fluid spilling.
I know.
Just off camera.
Yeah, I'm trying to soak it in before I head back to Korea.
Soak me in. Also, watch YouTube behind the scenes, I guess. If you want some,
there you go.
Some fucking.
That's
you want that.
That's a good ad.
There you go. This is a wild ass movie. I don't even know exactly where to begin.
How do you start?
I think like Mia Goth is a solid entry point here. She has been fucking tearing up the charts. Absolutely killed it last year with 2 Ty West movies. Here she is again with Brandon Cronenberg. And she's going to be back, I assume, later this year in Maxine, probably this fall.
She is.
Guess.
Yeah.
So she is fucking killing it. She kills it in this movie. She's extremely creepy, seductive. Definitely like takes full advantage of our like sort of main character James. We're sort of like identifying with him and following him throughout the course of this movie. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff happening. There's a lot of like metaphors and allegories that we can definitely get into. But even at face value, what's happening on screen is extremely engaging and disgusting. And I don't sexual. It's Cronenbergian, I guess, is the easiest way to summarize the vibe of this. It's definitely very much Daddy Berg's vibe, but sort of updated, freshened up, I guess. It's a little fresher.
His technical work is a little bit different. It feels. I don't know. I kept noticing. I don't know if you guys noticed. This is a very technical thing for us to cover because none of us are filmmakers. But there's a lot of shots and dialogue shots or whatever where you'll have the shot reverse shot, but like everybody in the scene is like blocked so that their eyes are like almost off screen and looking in the like just off camera, like right here, and then cut to right here.
A lot of negative space behind them.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's just like to be more interesting or to differentiate, or like I feel like there's got to be an intentionality to that, but I don't know what it is. If it's just like supposed to imply a disconnect between those people or what, but it happens throughout the movie in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of like auteur level shit going on with the camera, if nothing else, and certainly other things too.
Yeah, something about Brandon Cronenberg's films is they're sexual and they're violent, but they don't feel as gritty or dirty feeling as David Cronenberg's type of
sleazy. They're not sleazy.
That's a good word. And they're more, like you were saying before, like ethereal. He's got a lot of scenes where he does these crazy lights and colors and just these kind of like fades that he does, and it's really interesting to look at, and at times I would think, yeah, this feels more accessible than David Cronenberg's work, and then I was like, well, I don't know,
less really clinical.
Yeah,
it's less clinical. Like there's a more of a humanity in it, because I think he's more interested in like I said, like a soul or like a spiritual kind of level, as opposed to it's like very clinical, very physical, very visceral with elder Cronenberg.
Yeah. David.
Dave.
I agree. Great word. Yeah. Sleazy. And yeah, that's just how I kind of like felt about it. Cause I was processing it through the movie. I was like, okay, scene possessor, we're getting into the sexual stuff. It's getting like, real crazy, real violent, but I was like, it still feels like it's very similar to David Cronenberg's work, but also very different in a lot of ways too. So very interesting.
Yeah, it's cleaner, definitely less grimy, and even when you get to the more visceral scenes, like the full blown like orgy with masks happening in this, like you definitely get what's happening, but the way it's filmed, it leaves a lot to the imagination, and it's got sort of a cleaner sort of sheen. It just doesn't feel like you're watching this like probably very smelly orgy. It feels a little cleaner than that, I guess.
Well, it's kind of like woven in.
He really cleans up the smells.
Well, it's kind of like woven in really well. The violent parts and, like you said, the very disturbing, ugly mask are also like worked in really well with the beautiful scenery.
Yeah.
And again, like the beautiful types of lights that we would see as very like seductive or soft, or, I don't know, just that give a more kind of like pleasant vibe. It's worked in with those things. And so you have more than just the ugly mask and the violence and stuff going on.
Yeah. I think he's more visually audacious. Like he's trying things and playing with perspectives in different ways. And his use of color is much more rich, whereas his father favors a more like, washed out palette. But I think that's also like thematically makes sense, because he's dealing with things that are much more like ethereal, as opposed to something extremely concrete that you would get in something like a more standard body horror. So I think it makes sense. And I think some of that blocking that you guys talked about, I think some of that is playing with your expected perceptions and is like used to great effect to make you feel kind of the sense of uncanny and discomfort when you're watching it. Because your brain keeps trying to put their faces in the right places. And I think it's working on kind of like a subconscious level, and it's creating like a really interesting, disconnected, sort of discombobulating vibe that I appreciate.
Yeah, it definitely has that. Like, I don't know. Like, here's the like $1 million question: is like, who's got their theory about what is this film saying? Because that's where I was like, I feel like there's a ton of threads that I was very interested in. That I was like, okay, this seems like it's pointing at one thing. This seems like it's pointing at something else. But like getting them to tie together in any sort of cohesive way, I had a hard time with that.
Oh, really?
So like. There's a couple of central things that I think are pretty true, but I feel like there's so many like very specific details included that have to be pointing at something in particular and have to be woven in a little bit, but I don't know where else they get woven in. So like, for example, like Mia Goth's character, she's an actress, and she does this little thing on the night they meet. They go have dinner together, the two couples, and she talks about what she does as an actress, which is to be like the hapless, what is it? What was the word she used? It was convincingly fail or something like that. It's her job to convincingly fail. So she like, oh, I can't, how could you possibly cut a piece of bread with a knife? And like, that's a really interesting scene, but that's clearly saying a lot about her, but I'm not sure what it is. Like, I don't know.
I think it's tipping her hand of like what there's this mask of she seems harmless, and then we find out what she's really about. Like, it's all artifice, and I think she's kind of like, it's sort of setting that up.
Well, that's maybe, and like that's definitely could be true. Like, I feel like there's, by the end of it though, her intentions are so. It seems like there's. She's operating under different operating systems throughout different parts of this movie, and maybe it's just like the implying of something about the way they're engaging with the island and like how they're engaging with that stuff. But when they're leaving on the bus and everything is like strict mundanity, I thought that was like it was really interesting, but I couldn't figure out like where did that interest in like. Where did it all stop? Like, she ramped up to this moment and then just like fell off a cliff, and her intentionality is now like having dinner with the Joneses when they get home and shit like that. Like, or paying a bill. Like, it's just very strange.
Well, that could also be tied into the kind of seductiveness of this film, where it kind of ramps up in a similar kind of way, where there's some kind of like teasing going on, some flattery going on, where she's talking about his book and stuff, and then the interest becomes more and more, and then it becomes intimate, and then it goes from just a kind of normal type of intimacy to a more lively type of exchange that kind of like you think would peak at like the orgy with the mask, but it kind of goes even further into this violent sexuality, and then once it's done, once the experience is done, then it's kind of like back to life.
Yeah, there's so much to say about this movie. It's interesting in a way. In a lot of ways. So like when they're on the bus going back home, it's like they no longer have infinite lives. They no longer have that get out of jail free card when they get back to the States in the same way they do at this fictitious island. Like, of course, like if you're as rich as they are in the States, you have access to a lot more resources than somebody who might be poor does. But like, you're not, as far as I know, in this world able to just have a double made of yourself in the States. So like when they go home, they gotta
so naive, Bob.
They got to tighten up a little bit, I would assume. But also it's got a bit of that sort of like, we come out here to play. Like we're not eating. We're not eating where we're shitting kind of thing. Like it's like we got to go home and do business, and then we come out here annually and we fuck shit up. We have absolutely no regard for who's around us or how we're treating them or what we're doing to them or their land or their culture or their religion. They're just abusing anything and everything that's around them in a way that's really, really disgusting. And when they go home, it's back to business, I guess.
I think that, I think that goes a long way to bridging the disconnect that my brain was having with that character. Cause it really does seem like there's definitely is this movie. It's a few things probably, but the one thing that I kept thinking about was how they're interacting with the country or the island or whatever, and how they're just absolutely raping the land in every sense of the word, and raping the people's like lives in so many ways. And like, it's all in service of, fun. I mean, they're at a resort. Is this a movie about, tourist culture, the rich, the haves, the have-nots? I feel like there's more to it than that. And I want those streams to really collide in a very in a way that makes sense to my brain, but maybe it's just not built to do that.
I mean, for one thing, the sort of the origin story of this film was when he was younger, he went to a resort in the Dominican Republic. They bust them in under cover of darkness into this resort, and he spent the week there. The Chinese restaurant was based on the Chinese restaurant in this Dominican, where like the locals were wearing like very racist, stereotypical Chinese outfits. And then at the end of the vacation, after they were inside this fenced in space with like actual barbed wire around it that was like covered kind of with palm trees, they took him back to the airport during the day, where he saw the extreme poverty that surrounded this resort, that they were like in this weird Disneyland style version of the local culture. So that was kind of like I think that's like kind of the origin, right? But I think what he's kind of getting at here that maybe will marry these ideas for you is kind of this sort of social structure and how fragile the human spirit is when it is either incentivized or disincentivized from doing whatever it wants to do, and how that corruption can like perpetuate. And then what we see at the end of it is that these people are able to totally compartmentalize, and we see them switching, like basically code switching into their back into their real selves, and that allows them to kind of still see themselves in a positive perspective, even though they've gone and done these horrific things. And I think he's getting at some really like poignant social commentary around these people, particularly like an elite class of people who live in a situation where they just don't have the kinds of limits or what is it called?
Consequences?
Consequences. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Consequences that everybody else has, and like how corrupting that is. So I think that's what he's getting at with all of this. I don't know if that helps.
Okay. I think that's, that's what I was circling. I think it's just the thing at the end where they all are just like full scale, like even the color palette of that ending is so different. And it's great that Skarsgard is clearly like fucked up beyond repair because of his experience.
It's great.
But like all of the import that was placed on like certain things throughout that journey, I guess I had a hard time letting go of those things as maybe having some sort of significance beyond just like the hedonistic, like fucking like abhorrent treatment of the culture and the land that they're on, and the obscene wealth that allows them to get away with pretty much everything, which seems like that's kind of the core, right? Okay.
So that was that's the main topic that I took away from it. I think there's a ton of subtext going on for other themes going on that tie in well together. But I did take that away as my main kind of, you have these people who by all accounts can escape consequences up to a point, and then they realize there's a further point, and they revel in that of rich people can do almost anything. They still can't escape death. But this group of people has found like you can get a step closer to that. Yeah. And of course they take it to that limit because it gets you that much closer to that idea of money could, keep you alive forever. But we're not quite there yet. But we can get to this point where you could kill yourself, or can, and those kind of things. And so that's where that was the main theme.
So I guess it's like Skarsgard's interaction with them, like him as a central character that kind of like leaves a few like lingering thoughts in my head about like how is he meant to be seen in this movie? Like, because he starts off as this like he's a writer's block writer who has terrible reviews on a book that he got presumably through nepotism. He clearly has a chip on his shoulder about that. His wife clearly has a chip on her shoulder about that.
Yeah.
And they're here to try and experience something, and he even laughs at himself for like, I came to a resort to try and experience life so that I can write about it. Absurd, right? And like obviously they don't care because that's exactly what they're doing minus the inspiration. They just want to like go full hog into stuff. But like it's watching, like I guess his journey is just somebody who wants to experience something unbelievable, getting sort of like bewitched by that and like engaging with himself. And then,
I think they're playing on his very fragile ego. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
what I saw it as similar to, Randy, was remember when we watched Lords of Chaos?
Yes.
And so you had this group of people who kind of pretended it's all about the music and we're going to create this culture around it to boost kind of ourselves up. And then there was this guy who was kind of mocked and not seen as like equal to them, but then he like became a part of it, and then he took it to the next level, and it was true to him, and he really believed it, and he carried it in it until he found out it was not real. And then his whole identity kind of was threatened
Is wrapped
by
up in
that.
it.
Yeah, and so that's how I kind of took Skarsgård. Is he believes, well, first, yeah, they trick him by thinking like they admire him or whatever, but then he's caught up in it. He's had this transformative experience that he feels like he can't share with his wife because she didn't have that same copied experience. So he's with these people. He's like, yeah, they understand me, they get me, and then yeah, it really does give us this opportunity to kind of do whatever we want, and it feels good, and I get wrapped up in it, and then it falls out under him, and he has to deal with that.
Yeah. I kind of read into him as having a bit of like an imposter syndrome type thing.
Yes.
Because like he's not truly wealthy. He married into a wealthy family, and his first book may never have been published if he hadn't have done that. So he's not one of them, but he's sort of treated as if he is because he has access to this really nice resort. And come to find out, he's one of the locals to these people. They're playing with him. He is their entertainment, but he doesn't even realize he's their entertainment. So like at the end of the day, he means fucking nothing to them at all, which is pretty harrowing. I also I got kind of hung up on this, like a baby, like this like infantile sort of aspect. Mia Goth, her character is like constantly referencing him as like being a child. He's a baby. And she's sort of like, even at the very end, she's sort of like letting him suckle at her breast and like comforting him in this like infantile manner. And like that fucking like really stuck with me. I was like, what is that about? I was like thinking about it, and I could be totally fucking way off. This is just what I'm reading into this movie after watching it just this morning. But there was like the moment where he's beating the shit out of himself and he's masked and he doesn't know he's doing it. Like when he's like kneeling on the ground, hands behind his back with a mask on, it brought this like Guantanamo Bay imagery to mind. And I was like, man, that's like the first place my mind went to. And like when he starts beating the shit out of himself and then is revealed that he's like destroying a copy of himself, I just like, it made me think of like, if you're looking for like a broader metaphor in this movie here, like everybody very clearly states like where they're from at the beginning of the movie, like, you know, France, London, what have you. James is very clearly American. So like I read into him as being like the stand-in for America in this movie, and like his infantile like nature, like, you know, we're a younger country. We have all this money we don't know what to do with. We're sort of throwing our weight around as he is in this movie. And he's just like beating the shit out of his own image, pissing on his own image. And like at the end of the day, he's left like suckling on the own bloodied teat of Mia Goth, who's from the UK. It's just like, that's sort of, I don't know what that fucking means, but that's kind of a trail that I was starting to follow at the end of the movie that I found really interesting.
I like this tinfoil hat theory. This is good.
That's a global politics angle.
Yeah.
The globalists are at it again, folks.
Here we are.
I mean, I feel like there's such a through line about masculinity. I kind of feel like this is about like she's trying to break him down and she infantilizes him. By the end, he's completely and utterly infantilized by him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I took away from it, but I do like the socio-political angle.
I don't know if it was intentional or not, but that's what I got out of it.
Well, from the infant aspect, what I kind of took was playing with the idea that I don't ultimately think is important to the theme of this music, but to this movie, but is something that they introduced to keep this kind of ambiguous thing for you to chew on, which I think is interesting, which is the idea of, did the copy die? Or did the original die?
Yeah.
And so if you approach it from that idea, obviously you get to see once this happens, we find out Mia Goth, they tricked him. This couple tricked them and they knew what was going to happen. And they kind of set him up in a way to go through this process. And if it was the copy that has survived, then essentially they birthed him. Like this is an
I was going to say that
creature
that
is now existing and figuring out its place in the world as what it is.
It's he has a literal rebirth in a sense, and but rather than it being what they sort of seem to be positioning it as at the end, which that Mia Goth and her group are positioning it as, which is like, you know, it's like oh, and now you're free of any of the encumberments of your past. Encumberments? That's not a word.
It is now.
It is.
But
It is. I think it is a word. Yeah.
I hope so. But
Remix.
yeah, but it ultimately, like, he is unable to cope with his life at that point. So, like, he's born back into misery. It's a whole new kind of misery, a misery of knowledge of what you're capable of. I don't know. I had this thing, like you were saying, Bob, that like the infantilization of him or whatever. I partially, as you were saying that, I was like, this is, you know, whether or not they're a copy is ultimately not important. Just the same way as, like, ultimately whether or not, you know, you as a piece of code in a fucking semen cell, like, beating a whole bunch of other fucking things to the egg, like, it doesn't matter. Those things don't exist. And so, like, ultimately what matters is you carrying on as yourself. So, like, him having that rebirth is like beating the shit out of himself. You have to literally beat versions of yourself to then come out the other side. The trouble is,
Today in metaphors you didn't think you would hear.
yeah, no, I didn't expect to say those things.
Say semen a couple of times, Randy.
Man, I can't be the source of all. I can't be the source of all your boners.
We got a Patreon tier for that.
So yeah,
I don't know.
There was a lot of things. I was of the impression. I agree that it does not matter if you know there's a copy or not, but I love the playing with the idea. Obviously, with the mask, I love the mask designs. They're great. And the trigger for that I thought would hit Bob, I'm curious if it did or not, was the one that had all the little tiny holes in it, because Bob has trypophobia.
Yeah.
Oh,
hit
no.
Bob recoiled.
I was wondering, so I was like, "Oh shit!" Because they showed a couple times.
It's like right at the top to like 5
Yeah.
minutes in.
Guy's
I was like,
got
okay.
The bands, the band. at
Guy's
the
got
hotel
beehive
was
forehead.
playing it. Yeah, so I like those designs, and that's kind of the thing about this movie is it's got a lot going for it. And that's just another one, is there's these interesting masks that tie into this culture, that tie into this lore, that ultimately tie into the message of this film. But it all kind of works seamlessly for me. I never felt like any of those moments were forced, like, you know, since they're in this foreign country and they kind of explain the culture a little bit, but it's not this huge info dump where they have to give it to you. It plays out through, you know, the rest of the film. And it just, a lot of the things feel very seamless and yet very unique and interesting in their own beats. And I love how he kind of ties all those things together. It's very impressive, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, those masks and the way that they kind of touch back, they like circle back to his commentary on class is really interesting. Because if you look at them, they're like distorted faces, but they've got like money coming out of their mouths. And it's kind of the way that the locals probably see these people that come to this resort, and like how twisted these people are who have this money and pay this money in order to make all these clones. It's just like good. It's subtle, and like, in retrospect, you realize exactly how much thought went into those masks. I love all of the Brandon Cronenberg class stuff. He does this with all of his films to some degrees. He seems very, very, very critical of people with wealth and people who are in an elite class. And it's interesting to consider like who he is and probably the circles that his family runs with, that he has exposed to, the kind of life that he's seen and had a front row seat for, that's being channeled into his work, I think is really interesting and telling. And you see it definitely in this one.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because essentially he's in the same kind of boat as M would be. And maybe he kind of sees himself in that point, because M does seem genuine in that she loves her husband. She doesn't care about her father's money in the sense. I mean, she kind of uses it to help him, but not in a sense of like, I want him to be famous. It's more like, I want him to be fulfilled and to be happy. And she is, you know, kind of disgusted, and it's the first one to bolt out of there. You know, she's like, I'm out of here.
She does seem kind of like fed up with his bullshit before any of this stuff goes down.
That's true.
When they go to have like the picnic on the beach, the one dude asks, like, why James? Why are you married to James? What do you see in him? And I forget her exact response, but it's
They dodge it.
not flattering at all. She barely
she's
says
like,
anything.
it's kind of
it's to get back
It's
at her
about her dad. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, daddy
as we all
issues,
know.
yeah.
I have a daddy kink.
And as we all know, Brandon's only making movies to get back at his dad. It's all full
I can
circle.
do this better than you, Dad.
Yeah, so that's not really a flattering reason to be married to your partner.
Yeah, I don't see their marriage as being like on solid footing at all. Like, this is what I wanted to ask also, is like the very first shot of the film is a black shot, totally black, with a voiceover from the couple in bed. And she overhears him saying something. She's like, what does that mean? What did you just say? And he's like, I don't think I said that. Well, yeah, it was something about brain death, but it was like the white sand cannot prevent the brain death.
You
some
can't
shit like
eat
that.
The white sand, or was
Yeah,
that
something about eating white sand.
I could not remember it specifically, so I couldn't like
either.
postulate on it. But I was hoping somebody had that
Let's see if I wrote
on
it
hand.
But
But
I did not.
Yeah.
anyway, like that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I've got no idea. So that's it.
Yeah. So like there's a lot of like tendrils here. There's a lot of little things going on that like I want to like parse out. And I just like, I guess I was at this point at the end of the movie and afterwards where I was like, I just don't feel fully confident in any of the, like, I know what I felt during the movie. So I'm trying to figure out if I should just be analyzing it from that perspective, because from that perspective, the story is pretty clear. This is a man who is like his reaction to watching his first clone be killed, watching that thing, like the way that Cleopatra, whatever her name, like she reacts to him is like, I can't believe you acted like such a robot when you watched that. How could you do that? And I didn't really see that. Like, to me, it was like, I thought he was like somewhere, he was titillated / horrified, like horrified himself to climax, if you will. Like he was like, I don't know that like that was the right terminology or whatever. It just seemed like, I wonder why they chose that word. Like these little things just keep like derailing me on it. So I wonder like if there is a way of tightening that up in a more like logic based sense, but like from the dramatic and just like experiential, like the David Lynch of it all is, it's all very clear what's happening, that this is a man going through a fucking self-imposed crisis because he's allowing himself to be led by the nose by his ego. He experiences full-scale ego death, and then he does not know what to do with himself at the end because he ultimately is not one of the haves. Not like he's a have not who has married, he's glommed on and been taken advantage of, not by his wife, don't get me wrong,
desperately but
wants
to be
people.
Mm-hmm.
And he really wants to be. So I don't know, there's a lot. I hear everything you guys are saying. It's just like I had so many like little avenues that kept derailing my thought on this movie, and I just that's where my brain keeps getting hung up, is those little things. So that's my negative ding for the movie. I don't know. It's like I had a hard time with those things.
I don't think there's like one very clean cut metaphor for the movie, and I'm totally down with that. I think there's a lot of ways to read into it, and even if you don't want to read into it at all, it's still at its core a very wild, entertaining, crazy tale. So I think it's like a win across all avenues. Really, there's no way to watch this and fail, I don't think. Which is great.
Yeah, I agree in that sentiment, because I feel like the elements are in each aspect are strong. And if I want to go down this rabbit hole of this specific idea and message, I feel like it feels fulfilling to think about and to chew on, because I feel like it's done in a good, it's crafted in a very respectable way. And I feel that there's not one aspect that was introduced where I'm like, let me consider that for a moment. And I feel like it leads nowhere, or it doesn't amount to anything, or it was done poorly. And I feel like they all connect to each other fairly well. And there's probably a ton of stuff that I'm not considering because I've only watched it once. And in that way, I am definitely engaged to watch this another time and to explore this further and to kind of unlock some of these maybe hidden tunnels. But ultimately, it still feels fulfilling to me to get what I feel is kind of like the main message of this movie, and feel like I understand it well enough with the pieces I'm giving, but also know that there's probably more out there to engage with it again. And I completely respect that.
I mean, it's an interesting way. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just say, I mean, there's like definitely another like undercurrent of like anti-capitalism in this, which I respond positively to, like particularly around things like the shamanistic drug use and the way that they like take this like, you know, sacred kind of plant and use it like for perversion and commodification. And it kind of like speaks to the way that Westerners can modify like local cultures in that way. So I think, yeah, there's a lot. I would say that this is thematically dense, but like all the rivers lead back to like one very sort of class and social commentary based commentary about like elite and social structures. Yeah.
And that's like another arrogant aspect of them as well, because they feel like, oh, these locals, they think, drug use is illegal and they're very religious. And they're just like, let's just fucking breathe this shit in and fuck all night and kill people. It's just like a very arrogant way of like, I know how to use this drug in the fun way and the way that's like best. These people are dumb because they use it religiously or whatever. It carries that kind of attitude with the like, buy yourself out of your consequences and stuff like that.
True, but would it be better if they were pretending to be shamanistic about it and just sort of like I don't know. I imagine all of these people that say Burning Man who are doing ayahuasca and sitting in a teepee thinking that they're doing something.
My point exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like are you even doing drugs if you're not sucking on a Skarsgard's foot? No. The answer is no.
That's the real drug.
Who else thought that they were going to make him bang himself? I totally thought that. You did it? I thought that's where it was going.
I'm sorry they let you down, brother.
That's your Dennis Reynolds brain talking.
I mean, when they brought him out on the dog collar, I was like, Skarsgard's going to bang himself. That's where I thought it was going.
They really let you down. One thing I thought was going to happen is after he woke up in the bed and like the son who murdered his double like walked over to him, I thought we were gonna like see the quote locals be very kind and generous and like treat him in a manner that nobody else has treated him the entire movie. But we don't like really get a sense of the locals at all. Like he hallucinates and then wakes up and then goes right outside. So we don't really see any of that happening. But I was like, oh, we're going to see him be treated so fucking well by this family. But we didn't get that.
Well, that's interesting too. Like, cause he's completely separated from anybody, any locals that have anything but a profit motive for speaking to him. You know, there's, the police have a profit motive. The resort obviously has a profit motive. The fucking guy doing the most racist caricatures of any given culture, and I think he's the same guy who also is. Am I wrong about this? Like, am I right about this? Like, he's the same guy who also serves them food at the Chinese restaurant. Mm-hmm. They have the same guy doing both things, and it's like he doesn't actually have any interactions with any of the locals who are just kind of like can meet him on a human level, except for the guy he runs down.
I was like, there was one.
That's the only time he ever gets dinner, and so like he does like talking about even like going somewhere to
has a profit motive,
right?
You know?
Absolutely, yeah. Like there's no like we know that justice is hard to come by anyway, but man, justice really doesn't exist here. And if they make kids murder their father's killer or whatever, that's crazy. I don't know what's going on there. Like, I don't know. It's just strange. Like he went to this resort in order to experience, get inspired by theoretically the local area or something, but he's not engaging with it at all, period. So I don't know. I think that's pretty interesting to like, and lends credence to some of those other thoughts. I don't know. I'm very much freewheeling here because a lot of my thoughts about this were unformed and had no vocabulary to it. So it's good.
You're not ready to come out of the red vat yet. You need a little more time.
Yeah. You know, it takes a few tries.
Yeah. You need some more like Mia Goth psilocybin moments, and then you'll be ready.
Well, yes, I think we all do.
Fair.
I would not say no. Yeah. I don't know. It's a crazy fucking movie, and like I had a hard time staying. I feel like what came across to me, like what you guys are describing as like different avenues you can like, it just kind of came across as like a lack of focus. At least like that's how I felt in the moment of the movie. I can understand what you're saying, and there's definitely movies that do that I appreciate, and I appreciate it in this. But like as a first time experience, I don't think that I'm going to get the most out of this movie on my first viewing. I think it's going to take my second or third viewing.
It's
I
a
guess
multi-watcher.
where that's headed.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it just led me down so many alleyways that I couldn't center myself on. And then it would like yank me back in another direction. And I just had a hard time. I felt like I was being led astray a few times. But ultimately what those you guys are describing is true. It's just sort of like alternate pathways. And I kept trying to skip between them, and maybe that's, if that's intentional, which I would assume that it is, that's fine. But like as a first time viewer, it made it really difficult for me to really center on something.
I like that aspect of it because it just like shows you all the layers, and it invites you to rewatch it and think more about it if you want to do that. And I saw some goofy headline that I thought was really funny. It called Infinity Pool. It was like it's like white. It's a piss-soaked White Lotus or something like that. And I was like, what a ridiculous headline that is. That's not wrong. It's not wrong. It's not. But I went into this movie expecting like everybody to be pissing on everyone, and I was like, man, that's just there is not enough piss. I was expecting way more. I'm sorry.
I've just started watching White Lotus season 2, so I haven't gotten through it, and I don't want to spoil anything. But there's a character in there that I was thinking about during this like discussion and before a little bit, who asks his friends like, oh, you basically like, oh, you cheat on your wife, right? And the guy's like, no. He's like, oh man, monogamy, that was just invented to keep the middle class in line or some shit. And it's like both kind of true and really fucking fucked up to hear somebody say that, especially somebody who is describing themselves as the exception to that rule, being above it. That's like, so yeah, I think there's a lot of connective tissue. This has been the year of taking wealth to task. So like my brain was geared towards that just walking into this movie.
Still January.
If you're at a resort in a movie in 2022, 2023, you're probably not a good guy.
That's why you don't go on vacation ever.
Yeah. Just vacations are for assholes, apparently.
Are there any other major beats you guys want to touch on before we rate Infinity Pool?
I just want to take a minute to be like, Mia Goth is incredible. The whole scene of her on the hood of the car, come on, where she's just like unleashed, like revealed. It's so she's just incredible in this. She's so freaking good in this.
She is.
Yeah, that's a good to highlight her because she has a couple. I mean, I gushed over her on our Pearl review, on our X review, but
yeah, you did.
Yeah, for here, there's a couple. That one stands out. Or I don't know. All of them she does. There's never a scene where she's in. I like that she gets like more and more and more centrally involved until she kind of takes control and takes over. I
mean, she was always in control.
Yeah.
You just didn't know it yet.
I'm just trying to
She's like waiting for him in the lobby, like, nope, we're not leaving yet.
Yeah, no, she was waiting. But it's interesting. Like, I wonder, like just on a nuts and bolts level. And this is me getting in fucking plot hole territory. Like, not because it is, but because that's how my brain is thinking about it. But like, if she wanted him to get arrested and experience, cloning and death, why did they not just let him call the police when he hit that guy in the car?
That's a fair question.
I don't know. Is it just part of? I don't know.
In that way, she's.
I don't think it's important.
Control.
Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's ultimately important. But
I don't know the law. I guess so here, for instance, I don't know how it necessarily works in this country, but here, as Americans who are going to be watching this film, if you hit somebody accidentally with your car, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be charged with murder, especially if you call the police and try to help them. If they call the police, maybe he could have been saved. Maybe he wouldn't have died.
Yeah.
So
forcing him to leave means you definitely
secondary crime
guarantees.
Yeah.
Okay.
Crime. Yeah.
So
it's
how I would.
Also, maybe
that makes sense.
Conversely, maybe all four of them would have been in a clone situation, and she wanted to make sure that they were alone in that experience. Maybe. But I actually like your theory better.
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah. Sealing the fate. Makes sense. Let's go and rate this thing out of 5. Rachel, why don't you kick us off? How do you feel about Infinity Pool?
I think it's very clear that I loved this movie, and I have very difficult finding any flaws in it. I think based solely on that it's not my favorite of his 3 films, I'm going to have to knock it down slightly just to be fair. So I'm going to give this thing 4.5 stars.
Wow.
4.5 stars from Rachel. Solid. All right. Juice, how do you feel?
I feel really good about this film. And I've really enjoyed the discussion. I really enjoyed our discussion on his last film. What was it?
Possessor.
Possessor.
Okay. I really enjoyed that. And I still haven't seen Antiviral, and so I really need
gotta
to
see it.
check that out. Yeah. Because
It's on Tubi, I think, right?
Really?
now. Yeah.
Okay, I'll check it out this week then, because I really am enjoying his films, and they're very impressive.
plump, so right.
I'll go through some of my notes that I took. Luckily, I had the theater completely alone. I was the only one there. So I didn't mind making notes on my phone. But one thing I did make on my phone was I was thinking about this film, and I was thinking about David Cronenberg, and I was like, okay, Brandon Cronenberg, obviously, he makes things sexual as well. And sometimes I was like, does this need to be this sexual? And it probably doesn't, but it feels more appropriate, or it feels like it at least has more purpose than what sometimes David does, because sometimes when David does it, it just feels like he's trying to make it sexual, where at least when in Brandon Cronenberg's sexualization of some of it, at least it kind of fits towards some of the story and the themes.
I vibe with that, yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to kind of point that out. I didn't think about it in the film, except I kept thinking, does this need to be so sexual? But after the discussion, that's how I kind of feel. Visuals are great. At the picnic, there's a couple little hints that you can go back to, but at the picnic, he tries to feed Skarsgard a sausage, and he says something like, "Are you trying to kill me?" And then, like, looking back, I was like, "Oh, that's fun." They have little stuff like that. The pool scene is great. This was kind of a throwback to his father, Cronenberg, of like the red lighting, where he goes to see his clone for the first time. That was just like really cool lighting, and I like that vibe. A little more grimy too, and they're just like in this lab. Is the copy the one who lives? They may drop little hints like, "Oh, you watched it like a robot." The new friend I was telling you about, you are transformed. We are all zombies here. I love how they kind of like tease a little bit, but ultimately it doesn't matter. Everyone's a brother here. The theme of not fearing death or crime when you can pay your way out of it worked really well for me. I thought that they handled that in a great way. The masks are really cool designs. Even the little messaging of like peer pressure and stuff like that. The sex scene is so fantastic with the mask taking after his father, creepy and sexual. I did write this little note. I was like, again, to the idea of, is it a copy or not? I was like, I don't think it matters, because ultimately it reminded me of old Voldemort, where he tears his soul in half, and ultimately he takes three urns back, and like each time I was like, is he kind of like losing more and more of himself? Is he a copy? And as you copy it down further, does it get more diluted or something? I was like, that's a cool idea to ponder as well, even though I don't think the answer necessarily matters, but a cool thing to chew on. Ultimately, I really like this. I wrote the ending music is dope. So like the sound design, the visuals that they worked in, very beautiful. The mask designs, the lighting, the acting is fantastic. I don't know. I really like this film, and I think I'm going to echo a 4.5, with the only reason it not being a 5 is just, I don't know. It could go up to a 5 for me on rewatches. I think there's just so much to chew on that there could be something where I could be like, oh, okay, that doesn't work as well as I thought it did, or it's like so jam-packed that maybe it could have been cleaned up a little bit with a little less themes going on. But ultimately, I thought it worked really well. So I'm going to give it 4.5 as well. Bob, out of 5, where are you giving Infinity Pool?
Yeah, I largely echo your sentiments. I thought the movie opened up in a really interesting, confident way, in that there's like a solid minute of just black screen and you just hear audio, and it lingered so long. I was like, man, Is there like something? Is there a problem with my screening? Like, do I need to go let somebody know the projector busted or something? And then, of course, M opens up the blinds, and then you can see into their room. And I thought that was just such a cool way, like, to start a movie, because like right out the top, you're like, oh, that was intentional. He's playing with your expectations. I'm in the hands of a filmmaker that knows exactly what he wants to do. So I'm clocked in. I'm along for the ride. Let's do this thing. And I felt that way throughout the whole movie, honestly. Like shortly after that, with the camera like flipping around and like totally like forcing you to lose sense of any sort of grounding, like this like tumbling sensation that when you're watching it on a big screen, like actually started to like mess with my equilibrium. I was like, I'm getting kind of a little bit queasy here watching this, just like totally like throwing you for a loop, literally. And then all of a sudden you land in this like fucked up reality where this dude thinks he is a person, but he's not that person at all. And he's just somebody's entertainment for the week. And he has no idea. It's just so interesting. The performances are great. Obviously, everything I just described was the cinematography. It's fantastic. I'm struggling to find a negative point for it. There's a lot of interesting threads to pull on. What with classism, like the 1%, absolutely taking full advantage of other cultures and religions, just all the way up to whether or not it was intended, but like America being the big rich baby suckling on the UK's bloody teat. Like, I don't know. There's just a lot. There's a lot going on in this movie that I think is really interesting. I think upon another watch, I'll get even more from it. But right now, I think I'm going to echo Rachel and Justin with a 4.5 here.
Yeah.
Randy, why don't you close us out? How do you feel about Infinity Pool?
Randy, peer pressure.
Randy, we're
Come
so
on.
close.
Yeah, lots
We're
of peer
so
pressure.
close.
Don't you?
Don't ruin this for us.
I am not hard with this. So yeah, I mean, I don't. Ultimately, I think my issue with this movie comes down to what felt like a lack of focus, which I mentioned before, and I think that largely colored my experience with this movie. I definitely think that there's room to grow my my affinity for it, and I don't want anybody to walk away thinking that I didn't like this movie. I enjoyed this movie a lot. I'm just like, it poses so many questions, lots of little questions. It left me wondering about so many little things, and like intertwining them all into something that feels like cohesive is taking a lot more work than maybe it ought to, in my opinion. So I don't know. It's hard with a sci-fi bent to this, like a horror movie, sure, but like metaphors and things like that working within the sci-fi space, it's harder, right? Because you want to sort of apply a certain logic to the way that's like speculative, like technology or whatever works. I want to like, get into like why, like I want things to make sense on a schematic to some extent. Whereas like something like a David Lynch movie, which is about how you feel walking into a diner and hearing a song, that's a little bit different to me. It's a little bit more intuitive. I feel like there's more hurdles I have to jump over in order to get like fully immerse myself into the intuitive feeling of what's going on in the scene. That's how I felt watching this the first time. I'm pretty confident that a second watch is going to make things a little bit better for me. Now that I can sort of like confident, I know where this endpoint is now, and I know where like I can travel those alleyways a little bit better. But ultimately, it felt like a focus issue in the moment, and I'm going to go off that experience since this movie is largely like this is a movie that I'm gauging on an experiential level because I think that's the level it wants to be engaged with on most. I think that that's its strongest attribute, but also that experience is hindered a little bit by cramming a lot of different little messages in that I think all support a central thesis, but I'm not 100% confident. And I kept finding myself kind of trapped in little, dead ends and having to jump ship over to like something else because an entirely different like mode of thinking is entering the fray. I hope that makes some kind of sense. So yeah, like I do like this movie. All the things you guys said that were positive for the most part, I agree with. I really like the commentary about like, wealth and justice and the way people interact with cultures as a tourist and how those cultures interact with them or don't in some cases. And how you can bastardize those things so easily.
It's a roller coaster.
Yeah, I don't know. That's how I felt with the whole movie. So like, ultimately, I think that I really like this movie, but I'm not at the point of loving it. I'm going to give it a 3.5 for now.
Oh, Randy, you're cutting out. What was it? 4.5.
Like
all right.
Well, with Randy's incorrect score of a 3.5, that's going to put our aggregate at a 4.
You know what? I'm not smoking your fucking your tribal bullshit
Randy,
that you're trying to push onto me.
My tribal bullshit, Randy.
No,
That's still pretty good, though.
That
4.25.
4.25.
It's a good movie.
It beat out Possessor, which I believe was a 4 average.
Was it? I forget.
Something like that.
I trust you.
I think Possessor was interesting because that is a movie about like you're losing your identity. This is kind of that, but it's more like
losing
your
religion.
self-worth.
Losing your soul. Sure. It's losing your soul. Like, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I understood Possessor a little bit easier.
Yeah. 4.25 ain't bad. Let's jump over into our Rotten Tomatoes segment and see what the users and critics think about Infinity Pool.
Certified.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Rotten Tomatoes segment in which I'm going to ask these folks to guess within the best of their abilities what the aggregate positive score is on Rotten Tomatoes for Infinity Pool. We're going to start, as we usually do, with the critic score, and there are 118 reviews tallied. So among those 118 reviews, I'm going to start with Juice today. Let's start with Juice. Where do you think those critics' aggregate positive scores landed?
Oh no, this is tough. I think they'll respect the craft though, because I think there's a lot of great craft going into this film. I could see where it could be dampened a little bit by some of the violence and the sexual stuff, maybe. But I think it's going to be positive, and I'll go 75.
75. All right. Bob, how about you?
I'm going to go higher with an 80.
80. All right. Now, Rachel, how about yourself? What do you think?
So to be clear, this is just the critics, right? This is not including the audience.
We'll get to the audience
this is going to be in the 90s. I think that this did really, really well with critics. I'm going to say 96.
Ooh.
96. Year of our Lord that Scream came out.
Favorite section.
Wait, no, is that right? Yeah, that's right. Okay. Ass to back of head. Your favorite.
96.
All right, so I think I'm doing some quick math here. It's gonna be actually a tie, I think. Yeah, I think it's a tie between Bob and Rachel. This is 88% certified fresh.
Ooh.
Right between that 80 and 96. Somebody else do math and help confirm that that's right.
What did you say,
I think
Bob?
so. That's it.
That's 8 from mine and 8 from Rachel's.
okay.
So there you go.
Yeah. So congrats to the both of you, and no congrats to Juice.
Oh,
You're a loser.
That's okay.
How's it feel to be a loser?
I'll get the next one. Bob, I've been whooping you. Don't you even come at me.
Oh no, Daddy and Daddy are fighting.
Don't fight, ditties.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I have a daddy kink.
Oh,
All right, moving right along to our audience score. There's over 100 verified ratings listed here, so but similar amount. I'm going to start with Rachel this time. Rachel, where do you think that those audience members landed?
I mean, I think this is a divisive movie to some degree. I mean, granted, most of us were on the same page, but I'm guessing there's some people out there that like did not get it or felt like really uncomfortable with some of the content. So I'm going to drop this thing down to a 75.
75. All right. We'll go with Bob. Reverse order. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be lower. I will take these 69 dudes, please.
Oh, hell yeah.
69 dudes!
Juice, how about you?
I agree. I think it's gonna go even lower. I'm gonna take a 64.
64. All right.
They can also be dudes. That's fine.
Sure.
Redemption, Thy Name is Juice. It's 53%. 53%.
Oh my
Very
God,
low.
Celebrating, yeah.
That's
yeah,
not
the
even
hater.
Yeah.
You guys, this is not an accessible movie. I hate to break it to you.
Yeah,
I
that's what I
sat
was
in a
feeling.
theater.
You know what? My
Yeah.
barometer is broken.
Yeah.
Mine was completely
We're rarely
empty.
correct on this show too. So
yeah.
Well, also too,
I
when
don't know,
got
man.
home, my sister was like, "Oh, what did you see?" And I was like, "Infinity Pool." And sometimes she'll watch horror movies, but she's like not super into it. She's like, "Oh, you think I should go see it?" And I was like, "I don't think
Probably
you'd like
not.
it."
You should go see it with your sister. It'll be a great family outing.
Aw.
Not
Watch
awkward
the
at all.
I'm gonna watch
orgies with your family.
this is going to be a new Christmas Eve tradition.
Mom, Dad, get the grandparents. It's intergenerational good times.
I was. This is like
What does the
one,
title of this movie mean?
1 degree separated from The Shunting. I was like waiting for them to just like body.
Yeah, really.
Not
Like-
society.
No, I thought about Society a lot in this movie. Actually, I'm still not entirely sure why Infinity Pool is the most sensical
Because
name.
Infinity pools are boundaryless.
Yeah,
There's
you have
no bound.
infinite lives.
But they're
Seems
not.
that way, but it
They're-
seems that way.
Well, they have the appearance of having no boundaries.
Yeah.
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 Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Randy.
I'll take your word for it.
Also, that's
I
the
need
whole
time to
thing that
sit and
started
stew
it
in
off,
this.
you know, like
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
building that infinity
Sure.
pool, but from a metaphorical
Yeah.
standpoint.
It works.
Yeah.
I just like that story on its own doesn't justify titling
Yeah.
a movie after.
No, I think it's about like the
You have
false
to have
appearance
something
of
more.
no boundaries. Yeah.
I like
I
that.
see.
It's because pools are deep and
Brandon
That's-
Cronenberg
that's
is
it.
and this
And
movie's
very-
deep, and
very
we're all
fluidy.
yeah, we're all snorkeling in the
Yeah.
deep,
A lot
deep
of
end of the
volume
infinity pool.
of
yeah,
fluids.
you can have an orgy in them. It's obvious.
Oh yeah, that's the site of
I mean,
many
that's the most
orgies. I'm
sanitary
sure.
way. Yeah. Mhm.
Mm.
Chlorine, whatever. You know.
Just make sure you get that water-based lube.
Hashtag.
All right, our critics'
Water-based
consensus
lube.
reads as follows. Turbulent waters, even for strong swimmers, Infinity Pool provides a visceral and all-inclusive retreat of Cronenbergian perversion for those wanting to escape commercial sundries. Man, somebody, the consensus writer is like,
Too cute.
man, somebody's
Yeah.
really flexing some similes and shit here.
Yeah, it's like a dad joke got a hold of a thesaurus.
Yeah. That's a great description. Jesus. Love that. All right, and now we're gonna read a negative review because they tend to be funnier. We'll see. Totally at random here. A supplantation salad bar of half-developed plot points and superficial graphic imagery in service of a theme that's about as generic as anything you'd find in a mainstream studio film. What is a
Nailed it.
supplantation?
SOUP.
What the fuck is that?
Supplantation of
It's
a salad bar?
SOUPLAN plantation. Like it's one word though.
It's a pun.
Why?
That I'm not fully understanding.
I mean, he's trying, like, if you supplant something, you're like replacing it essentially. Like, this is somebody that probably said replace somewhere else in their review, and we're like, hold on. Supplant,
Yeah,
that
but-
sounds good.
It's soup. They wrote soup.
Well, the salad bar, and the
Supplantation
soup,
salad bar.
it's too
I
cute
don't-
to
that's-
make sense.
man.
Yeah.
Apparently,
this guy's guilty of the same thing he's
supplantation is
critiquing.
a Sweet Tomatoes operating as soup plantation in Southern California
Sweet Tomatoes
was a
knockoff.
United States-based chain.
I
Man,
love a sweet
tomatoes was
tomato.
the best. I know what happened to sweet tomatoes.
Yeah, I forgot
R.I.P.
all
I know.
about
Justice for
tomatoes.
sweet tomatoes.
Pour one
and
out.
that pizza
It's so
And
good.
Damn, it's been
and
a hot
the
minute.
frozen yogurt, self-serve frozen yogurt
Hell
bar.
yeah.
Now that's we want to talk about injustice and societal structures crumbling. Let's talk about what happened to sweet tomatoes.
Yeah,
Forgot
I'm
all
down for
about
that.
sweet
That's a whole
tomatoes.
podcast
So-
right there.
I think we all fairly liked this. I'm wondering at what point in Brandon's career do we stop like comparing him to his father? Like, so much of what we talked about today was couched in comparison to David Cronenberg. When does he
Because he's
become?
in that space.
I mean,
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Kind of doing it to
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah, it's similar.
Yeah.
I mean, how so?
Well, I mean,
Oh, he's dealing with he's approaching things from a visceral, graphic, sexual, and violent point of view a lot of the time. Like that's that's daddy's bread and butter. Like, I don't know that you can fully, like, those are very universal in many ways. So, like, fair point there.
Do you think he should have changed his name? Like, I don't feel like every time we talk about Joe Hill, every time we talk about Joe Hill, we don't talk about Stephen King, you know?
Well,
so do you think
I do.
I don't hold it against him in
the Nepo police over here.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Like, it's the thing is, like, I try not to compare them, but like it seems so much closer. Like, I don't know.
It's also like Jordan Peele. Okay, he released his third film.
It's two filmmakers,
and we had to compare Nope to his other films because of his success. David Cronenberg is a very distinct type of filmmaker, and Brandon Cronenberg obviously is influenced by that, and it's okay because he's obviously made it his own. Anytime I mention David Cronenberg today in reference to Brandon, I never held it against him because I feel like he has done it in a unique way or better in some ways. And so I give him, and really it's almost like a reference point to just kind of give him more props in my mind, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't meant as a criticism. I was just kind of thinking about it because he's becoming one of my favorite filmmakers. Yeah. And I'm wondering, when does the ghost, and I do actually feel like he's doing his own thing. Like, yeah, he's in the horror genre, but like what he is talking about are totally different things. Like, I think he is. So I'm wondering for myself as well. Like, I was just thinking out loud. Like, at what point do we like completely bifurcate, or will he forever always be in the same sentence in comparison to the work of his father? When does he become
there's a way to fully escape unless he's like,
unless he
40 years on with,
like, I think he's gonna be.
Well, I think
oh my god,
his dad's a horror filmmaker.
I think
he's a horror filmmaker.
His rom-com.
Maybe.
I think it's important too sometimes in horror, or even I guess just when you're critiquing films or doing an analysis on them, is, you know, I will sometimes talk about Robert Eggers and Ari Aster in the same kind of vein because the style is similar. So in saying like, oh, what worked in this kind of film when you're looking at it through this kind of lens. So I think it's easier to look at Brandon Cronenberg through a lens of like, well, it's easy to compare to David Cronenberg because the styles are so similar. Whereas I wouldn't compare him to like a John Carpenter necessarily because we're talking about apples and oranges in that way. Where at least with Brandon Cronenberg and David Cronenberg, it's more apples to apples.
Yeah, I think it's just complicated by the fact that it has that like nepotism or appearance of nepotism, even though I don't know. I feel like he's doing his own thing.
He makes good movies. If his movies suck,
I think what
it'd be different.
Sorry, Bob.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like, nepotism be damned. I don't care. He's obviously got talent. He's got something to say. He's making interesting films, and I'm happy to watch them and talk about them. When they start sucking, then I'll stop watching them. That's
you'll still watch them.
I'll probably still watch
them. No, you won't. You're still gonna buy everything else. You're still gonna put them on the shelf.
Bob. You watch it with your leash on.
I think that if he was unrelated to Cronenberg, I think if this was like just
exclusive.
if there was no name attachment to Cronenberg in this, I still think we would be making like some offhanded remarks about Cronenberg because some of the stuff is like, it's visceral in the same way. He's definitely he's using the tools that his dad like instilled in him, I assume, or like to tell different kinds of stories, to tell kind of intricate stories that are more in line with what you would see in a modern auteur horror film director today. So I think it's just natural progression, whether or not he's his son. I don't think that's necessarily important, except that it's like, hey, check out the dynasty over here. Good for them, I guess. I don't know. As long as he's not sucking wind, like making terrible facsimiles of his dad's work, then it doesn't feel like the wrong kind of nepotism, if that makes sense.
Right. I read so many interviews with him today, and literally every single one they asked about his dad. I was like,
I'm sure greats on him. It's
damn.
It's like Skarsgard and his wife, and his wife / father-in-law getting like that nepotism is built into this movie. Like, he obviously his lead character has a chip on his shoulder. His ego's at stake because he may or may not have only gotten his shot to be a media personality.
Think about that.
through a version of nepotism. So I
Interesting,
don't think that's
yeah.
I don't think that's an accident. I think he's definitely frustrated by that, and he has reason to be because he is making something worthwhile with or without that.
Yeah.
So I
I'm
don't know.
gonna say
Is
something
this about-
controversial. I'm like,
Yeah.
I actually think he's the superior Cronenberg.
I don't think that's.
Sorry.
I think
Sorry.
that's gonna a growing
I
contingent.
wouldn't disagree
honestly.
necessarily, other than just, I guess, if looking at the cat, once he builds up a bigger catalog.
Yeah, but then
Yeah.
you'll see
I
if
like
he
the
has
grittiness.
the longevity. I think I
like-
But I mean, if you compare like Shivers to Antiviral,
I kind of
I'm
love
just
Shivers.
saying.
I haven't seen Antiviral though. He's got a
I'm
daughter.
dying for you to watch Antiviral. It is
He-
fucked up.
He has a daughter that's coming out with a movie at some point in the near future too. So
Yep.
like the whole family's filmmakers.
I think
which
she
cool.
is doing a romantic comedy too.
I was gonna say she's
sexual.
It'd be great if she was making like the Shaggy Dog remake or something.
Oh my god!
We gotta cover it. We gotta cover it.
The cat from outer space.
That's bad. Let's keep trucking here. It's time to get into our Cooter of the week.
Straight chillin'. Cooter of the
Juice, what is a Cooter and why do we hunt them?
Ho! Cooter's a character type and a straight chillin' exclusive. Cooter must hit 3 of these 5 points to be considered a Cooter, but we want the Cooter with the most points. The 5 points of Cooterdom are sexual deviance, manipulation, smug arrogance, overall look and attire, and overall patheticness, gang. I think there's probably a Cooter here somewhere. I wonder if there's ever been any Cronenberg film ever, father or son, that did not include a Cooter. I doubt it.
I doubt it too.
Yeah.
Is there a Cooter in Crimes of the Future? Who's the Cooter in that one?
Oh yeah.
I'd have to.
Kristen
we did
Stewart?
a mini. I think we did a mini cast on that.
We
We'd have
did.
to look. I can't remember exactly who it might be. You know who it might be? Yeah, it might be his. Is it his wife or assistant? I can't remember.
I remember,
She
but you
might-
gotta go
Kristen
listen to the
Stewart
episode.
is
Yeah, I guess-
manipulative.
Yeah, Kristen Stewart is definitely manipulative.
Yeah.
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 I totally
I think it's old
remember.
K Stew.
Yeah.
The K
Yeah, that's
stands
a
for
tough one.
Cooter with a K.
Cooter stew.
Cooter substitute.
So in this
That was my
one-
nickname in high school.
Was it?
Are
Was
we-
it now?
Are we gonna
I
nominate
totally
the
bought
lovely
that.
Mia Goth?
The Cooter Stew was my nickname in high school.
Yeah. I mean, why not? Cooter.
I
The
appreciate
word
your
Cooter.
opinion.
We have formalized it, but it
Yeah.
existed in the wild outside
yeah.
of us,
It's like
and
a
I'm
turtle
always
or
interested to
something.
hear how other people use the word.
I heard someone
Anyway.
once say they got a rug burn on their cooter. That's like really kind of my own
Yeah.
time of experiencing cooter talk
I've-
in the wild.
Cooter equals vagina is not. It's not the first time I've heard
That
that.
sounds really painful.
Magooch.
Yeah.
Rug burn on Magooch.
Magooch guy.
On the coot.
Mug. M-U-H. Gooch. Mugooch.
Yeah.
Me a Goth is probably a Cooter.
Yeah,
right?
I think she
Yeah.
might be top Cooter contender this week. Let's see.
Manipulation.
Okay,
Manip.
she's hard manipulating.
That one's easy to come by.
Hard
though.
manipulating.
Mm-hmm. Why they gotta ruin a yabo in here with rubbing blood all over it? Come on, what are we
ruined to
doing
you,
here?
but maybe not to
I am not
everybody.
kink shaming. I am kink asking why.
That's my trigger. I was like,
Kink
no,
question.
what a lovely yabo.
The blood of a murdered man on your yaba.
Well,
That's
blood.
very specific. I feel like,
no,
oh,
I'm
okay.
very sensitive to like
Sexualizing
blood. in general.
blood.
Well,
I was like, we're gonna have to get into this.
sexualizing blood, but I'm very weak even when
I-
they take my own blood. But sexualizing it, like, really,
Blood anywhere else is great, but on a nipple, I gotta draw the line.
got it. No, that's
Blood on the
line.
tracks, no problem.
Oh yeah.
Damn. Okay, manipulation. Yes. Sexual deviancy. Yes.
The old reach around was a pretty clear indicator early on.
Yeah, the forced reach around.
Yeah,
forced
Like I'm
It's a
pissing.
very low bar for deviancy if reach arounds are triggering.
Well, it wasn't
While
consensual
your
at the
mutual,
time.
like,
it was
Spouses are seconds away.
It's really the reason
And
she
you were
was
not
doing
asked
it
for it.
too. Like to
That's
manipulate
true.
him.
That's
Like,
true.
yeah.
What else we got? Smug arrogance. Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, especially.
I think anybody in
especially
this
when
movie
she
that has
says-
ample screen time.
She's
screen
on the
time.
on the hood of the car. She's
Yeah, and she like your book sucks shit, dog.
She
Yeah.
said that. End
Direct quote.
Yeah.
So smug arrogance. Overall, looking at Tyra though, she's looking mighty fine.
Yeah.
I won't think
Can't ding that.
And
You
then
can't ding that.
overall patheticness.
No, she is in control.
She is
Yeah.
in control. She is.
Yeah,
I don't see-
girl boss.
So then we
There's
can,
not a moment of doubt in this woman.
Yeah.
Well, then let's
Hence
look
the
at
arrogance.
James then and say overall patheticness. Yes.
Check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So he hits that one. He would also then hit on sexual deviancy because I don't think his wife is probably going to be chill with his masked orgy. I don't think so.
Well, speaking of mask, do we ding Mia for the mask? I don't think so. So skip
Nah,
it.
that mask is dope, dog.
The mask is kind of worn by everybody.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
She's at 3 out of 5.
Smug arrogance. Do we think that he's smug? I think he's pretty low
I don't think
low
so.
ego at the beginning of
I
this
mean,
movie.
He's out a lot.
I
He
think
never tries
he
to
becomes
assert.
smug. Like when they get to the party, when he's at the party and when he's beating up his clone, like that.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty smug.
That's
That's
fair.
true. He's also like doped up though,
Yeah,
and
but
like
he-
manipulated
so he
at that
thinks-
point.
Well, so he thinks that the masked person is the cop, and he's trying to like
Yes.
force his will on him.
He also
That's
knows.
true.
So they tell him this is the cop that's standing in the way of him getting a new passport. He knows he has a passport and doesn't need the cop's help, so he's just beating the shit out
Oh,
of
that's a
people
good point,
for the fun
actually.
of it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually.
So yeah, I think he does.
I
hit
didn't
some
think about
smug
that.
arrogance then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess so.
manipulation. He manipulates his wife. It's a lower
He
level,
does.
lower stakes
Yeah, 'cause
manipulation, but he definitely manipulates his
he
wife.
manipulates the situation. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
that's
he's hiding his passport and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And she obviously wants him to go with her. Huh? Yeah, maybe he's a higher cougar.
sexual deviancy.
4 out of 5?
He might be.
4 out of
Yeah,
5?
James.
Mhm.
And then overall, looking at Tyre, I mean, he at one point he's just naked wearing a dog collar. We're gonna give it to him.
I mean, that's fine.
Okay, Bob. That's what Bob's into. So that's fine.
I mean,
Okay, nothing else. He's got 4 out of 5.
yeah, that's higher than
Yeah.
me, a goth.
Yeah. Either way, we got ourselves a pair of Cooter squad. Anybody else?
Probably everybody else.
Yeah.
I think yeah. I want to nominate the dude who's hosting all of the quote unquote cultural events at the hotel. Fuck that guy. Fuck him. I'm just gonna say he's a cooter. I don't want to go through the thing, but
All right.
he's a
All
cooter.
right.
we got him. We got him.
Sweet.
Wall to wall cooters.
Yeah.
James and probably everybody else. We got him.
Once we go through the whole Cronenberg catalog, we'll prove they always have a Cooter.
Chaos does indeed reign. Let's go ahead and kick our feet up, let our hair down, and talk about what we've been watching this week.
Hey gang, what you been watching?
Rachel, why don't you kick us off? You've been watching anything else this week you want to chat about?
Sure. Well, it was Sundance, so I did watch some things there. I will not get into spoilers because obviously these things don't have distribution yet, but I'll just highlight a couple of the horror things that I really enjoyed. Obviously, Infinity Pool was the big one that I was like most excited to see, but I ended up seeing a couple of other ones I thought were really interesting. The first one is Birth, Rebirth, which is the feature film debut of director Laura Moss, starring Marin Ireland and Judy Reyes. And it's basically a contemporary take on the Frankenstein mythos.
Cool.
It's super transgressive. It is super subversive. The person I was watching it with was having a hard time in parts of it because it goes some places. And I think it's really especially interesting in the context of the origin of Frankenstein, that Mary Shelley wrote it in the aftermath of a miscarriage. And this is about there's a lot of motherhood themes in it, like what you would do following the loss of a child to bring that child back, what sacrifices you would make, what kind of the ways that might corrupt who you are. Very Infinity Pool in that perspective. Really great performances. Like I said, very, very challenging in places. And I really, really loved it. It's been picked up by Shudder, so it should be coming later this year from there. And when it does, I highly recommend checking it out. The other thing I watched is Talk to Me. You guys may have heard about this because there was like a big bidding war with A24 to get it. They haven't disclosed how much it was, but it was in the like multi millions. So they're putting some money behind this one, and it is a new film. It's an Australian film from two twin brothers named Danny and Michael Philippe. I don't know, something like that. There's a lot of vowels in there, and I'm an American, so here we are. And it is about this group of teens who get their hands literally on the embalmed hand of a medium that allows them to communicate with the dead and to invite them in to their bodies, which you'll be shocked. I don't want to shock anyone, but it doesn't turn out very well.
No way.
But come on, that sounds like a foolproof plan.
I know. It's very, very tricky. But it's gory. It's fun. It's probably the hardest horror of all the I saw at Sundance. And I think when it does actually come out later this year, it's another one that's I think it's gonna do really well. I think especially if they put it on around the holidays with the A24 label. It's definitely more in the vein of like a bodies than a Hereditary. But it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy it quite a bit. So that's what I've been watching.
That's really cool. Thank you. Thanks for the rundown. Some stuff to look forward to.
Yeah.
Sure. Nice. Juice, what you been watching?
I watched All Eyes, which was a horror film about a podcaster who is disgraced, and then he gets this story he thinks it's going to bring him back about this farmer who thinks there's this monster in his like woods behind his house, and he's going to like go record it all and stuff. It's like definitely feels like it's got a lower budget, but I thought it was pretty solid for what it was. Won't blow your nuts off, but it was pretty solid. I watched Triangle of Sadness, trying to watch some of the nominated films this week, and that one was pretty good. I liked it. There was a lot of poop. It was like kind of cracking me up how much shit was going on.
Literally.
Yeah, so I'm excited for Bob to watch that. We all know he's a scat man. But so yeah, I enjoyed Triangle of Sadness. It had some similar themes to the film Infinity Pool, and it was interesting. I watched Bullet Train. That was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. I went in with like zero expectations. It was just on Netflix, and it came out last year, and I heard some people kind of dug it, threw it on, and was like, hey, it kind of reminded me. It had like some Lock, Stock vibes, but also it was on a bullet train going from Tokyo to Kyoto, which is what we're going to be doing so soon. So I was like, oh, this setting is cool, and like the cast was fun. It was just fun, very low stakes fun for me. And then finally I watch Crazy Rich Asians with my parents. They wanted to watch a movie, and that's the one they picked, and so that is what it is.
Okay. Cool.
Other than that, I watched like the first hour, I think, of All Quiet on the Western Front, trying to get through that one as well, but it's like 2.5 hours, so I'll get there next week. Yep. Bob, what you been watching, my guy?
I did watch the entirety of All Quiet on the Western Front. I guess this is a remake. I have not seen the original by the same title. I assume it's a remake.
Well, it's a book.
It's not a film. I thought it was also
maybe there is also.
I thought it was also a film. Anyway, that shows how much I know about the history of this title. It's on Netflix. It's fantastic. It's extremely like visually stunning. It is a very grim depiction of World War I. Through the eyes of a small group of very, very young German soldiers. And it's not a good time, but I do recommend watching it.
It's sold.
Yeah, it's a long haul. It's like 2.5 hours, but I was never bored with it. And like usually when I find a movie on Netflix that's really long in the tooth, I throw it on. And I'm like, man, cutting 20 minutes from this would be so very easy to do, and I did not feel that way at all with this movie. The characters are so well written. I enjoyed it as well as I think a person can enjoy a movie that is this depressing. So I recommend it if you're down for a very kind of a bummer time. So check it out. Prisoners, I watched that because you were talking about it over on G Baby's podcast. Shout out to Waxing the Porpoise. I never really heard of Prisoners. It's a Villanueva joint, however you say that dude's name. I don't know. It's got a really amazing cast. Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, Paul Dano, some other folks. It's like I guess it's like a crime drama is the easiest way to pitch it. It felt similar to like Zodiac to me in a way. It's another long ass movie. It's like a 2.5 hour movie or something like that. Really super engaging, really interesting. Plays with a lot of ideas that sort of beg the question of like what you would do if you were in these people's shoes. Morality issues here and there, and like how the movie ends up really like further asks those questions of you. I thought it was a really well written movie, really well acted too. Everybody really shows up. I believe Prisoners is also on Netflix, so if you haven't seen it and you're down for like a pretty great like thriller, Seven also comes to mind. It kind of has like a Seven vibe. Check out Prisoners.
So Fincher.
Yeah, Fincher. Let me like name every Fincher movie. Yeah,
It's Fincher.
What you think of our discussion? Really, shed
also
some
really
light.
good. Yeah, solid discussion. That movie like knocked my socks off. Honestly, I was not expecting it to be quite as good as it was. So check out Prisoners. I really enjoyed that. That's about it. That's pretty much all I've been watching this week. Randy, what you been watching?
You know, I didn't think that my self-esteem this episode could be any lower because all you guys are watching fucking like high-end good shit, and I watched Royal Rumble from
Hell
WWE, and I enjoyed that greatly. I watched that last night almost entirely, and I'm not like I grew up on wrestling for like a 3-year stint at WCW when I was a kid, but now like I had no frame of reference for most of these people now, and fortunately I had my friend Zach was hosting, and he was like giving the rundown on everybody, and I'll tell you, man, there's like a ska guy who's in the main event, and there's like
A wrestler
a
who is a
swamp
ska guy?
wizard.
A swamp.
Yeah. There's like a swamp wizard with a hat man who chases
I'm
him.
Googling this.
It's fucking insane. Like there's a lot of things on there that I am shocked that are like make it on there because they're so ridiculous in a way that I loved. I enjoyed the fuck out of watching this. And then the Royal Rumble bit, which is like, 30 men or 30 men and then 30 women in a ring throwing each other over the top ropes. Last man
It's
standing
just called
for the
Infinity
Cronenberg.
Pool.
Infinity Pool. Yeah, there you go.
yeah, it's a lot of fun with almost no context. So I just had a good time with that. And other than that, like,
Is the ska wrestler does he have a move called the skank?
no, when I say he's a ska wrestler, I mean that he is literally, as a person, a ska fan who has become popular
I was
within the
hoping
wrestling
he had a
world.
horn section.
No.
Did
As
he
far
kill
as I
somebody?
know, that's not the
Did
case.
he knock somebody out?
But
with
he's
a
getting
bomb?
like the
He's
serious,
not a
the head.
themed wrestler.
He's getting the headliner spots here. Like he's getting the big emotional, like the climax of the show. And I'm just psyched that anybody who's carrying the ska torch is doing that well anywhere. I don't know. Other than that, like I really haven't watched a whole lot. I've been playing Hades like a motherfucker. That's all I've been doing. So I have nothing like I can put no feathers in my cap. I can be pompous about nothing because I've been watching wrestling and playing video games. So
Take
yay,
yourself
man.
down a peg or two.
Sounds
Why
good.
don't you? You know.
I know. I'm going to hold Cronenberg's feet to the fire so hard, but I'm going to go home and watch goddamn fucking WWE. That's my game.
Do better, nerd.
That's fine. No shame to people who love that stuff. I like,
Yeah.
obviously I enjoy both of those things, but I just like, I wish that I had also watched All Quiet on the Western Front so I could talk about themes and stuff.
Nope. Not as sophisticated as us, Randy.
It's a great bummer of a time. Check it out. Yeah, that's what we've been watching. We got one more segment to get into, and that is, of course, our Hotline Screams.
Hotline Scream.
If you are listening and would like to call in and leave a voicemail to be featured on next week's show, hit us up at 904-638-3231. We do have one voicemail this week. We're going to hear from our friend, the librarian. Let's hear what she has to say.
Hey, mother truckers. This message is for Randu and Randu only. So everyone else, plug your ears. I'll give you a moment. Hey, Randy. Now that's just us. I just wanted to remind you that reading is purely for fun, and please don't beat yourself up over not reading as much as you wanted, because like everyone's got different skills and talents, and there's no reason to beat yourself up. I notice that sometimes you self-deprecate a lot, and I just wanted to remind you to not do that, because like we all love you, dude, and your input. Not to mention your talents. I mean, hello, you did all the straight chilling stuff. Your art's badass. You did a whole freaking animated short on sensory processing disorders. Emphasis on you because you did it. I'm giving you a virtual pat on the back. Anyway, Infinity Pool was so much fun. Me and Goth, I am single, but I hope you guys like the movie. I probably won't know because this will likely be played on the Infinity Pool episode. So, yeah. All right. Bye.
Wait till she hears what you've been watching this week.
I know.
So disappointed.
I didn't. I forgot that I also had an emotional crisis last week. So, great, good for me.
Everyone, let's hug Randy.
You're doing fine.
Bring it in,
when
brother.
I've inspired people to course correct my self-deprecation, it's like, okay, this has gone too far. The joke's over. I have my self-esteem is fine. I just think I'm an easy, like yourself is the easiest target, and nobody's gonna like give you shit about it. You know, you're never gonna like step on somebody's toes when it's your own toes. So I slam on my own toes a lot. It's fun. I do it for fun, people.
It's
so.
I love Randy, you. What was the voicemail about?
What?
What was the voicemail?
They weren't listening. I listened. They didn't. I listened.
Oh, I see. The voicemail was about rescuing me from low self-esteem. No,
come on, Randy.
No, yes and no.
Yes.
Yeah.
Damn it.
That's all. Thank you, librarian. I appreciate your kindness.
Hell yeah. Thanks for calling in and boosting Randuce up. Again, if you want to call in and leave a voicemail for next week, hit us up at 904-638-3231. Do you guys have any prompts you want to throw out there for next week? Maybe some weird orgy stories you want to share? Call in. Let us know.
Hotline Kings.
Infinity
When was the
Pool
first time you shunted?
The first time? Can I remember
and
that
no one,
far back?
you never forget your first shunting.
I don't know. Also, we got Shyamalan coming next week, huh?
No, well, you're blowing up the spot, but yes.
Okay.
You are
well,
correct.
I thought maybe people might want a Shyamalan question.
Tell us about
Fuck you.
what Shyamalan movie did you first shunt to?
When did you give up on Shyamalan?
That's a fair question.
At what point did you say no more Shyamalan?
It's like the Simpsons question all over again.
Yeah. So what point did you give up on Shyamalan and told him, you're not getting any more of my money, guy? Tell us.
Tell us. Yeah, sure. Also, the shunting question or the orgy question. That's fine, too.
I think I gave up Glass.
Yeah, dude, Glass was a tough one to swallow, for sure.
Glass is tough.
You can't swallow Glass.
Glass is generally tough to swallow,
Can't
yes.
do it.
I'm glad we can all agree.
Yeah.
Listen, don't judge. Don't yuck my yum, sir. I think it was Lady in the Water for me. I was like, animal! But then they got me back to Servant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like The Visit.
Well,
and Split.
That was
Split.
so good.
Visit's
I was
actually
like,
good.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit, yeah. And then...
And then he made Old, and you're like,
then he made
oh.
Old, and I thought, God, I should have stuck to my
Oh.
rule.
Still haven't
giving
watched
up
that
after
one.
Glass.
Shunt.
We're all lining up for the Knock on the Cabin in the Woods. Did you guys read that book?
I
Did not.
No.
I'm as is evident by that voicemail. I don't.
I mean,
read,
I wasn't asking you, Randy. I already know. Just kidding.
Well,
Kidding.
Oh, shit. No, I've heard it's really good, though. So hopefully the movie's good. I don't know. We'll see.
maybe good source material is all he needs.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Avatar, that didn't work out.
Good source
did not
material.
That's fair. I haven't seen Avatar, but I know people love that shit and hate
Oh, my
M.
Lord.
Night for everything he did.
That movie, I made it 5 minutes, and that was enough. Hit us up 904-638-3231. Let us know about any of that. Rachel, it's been great chatting with you. Thank you so much for sitting with us. It was
It's been
a lot of
wonderful.
fun.
Thank you for
Appreciate
having
it.
me. It was so nice to be invited and to get to hang out with you guys. This was a great one to come on for too, because there was so much there to like really get into, and I feel like we had a really great conversation. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Next time we'll invite you for something with absolutely nothing to talk about.
I will put my tinfoil hat on.
Hell yeah.
Don't
You're
worry.
gonna find it. Okay, I approve.
Do you want to let everybody know one more time where they can find the Zombie Girls Podcast Network?
Sure. So our podcasts are on wherever you're getting your podcasts. We're on every platform. Come check us out. Zombiegirls, GRRLZ.com. And if you want to follow us on social media, which you should, because one of our co-hosts, Ariel, is our social media medium, and she's amazing. We're a great follow. You can do that at ZG Podcasts, plural, ZG Podcasts.
Awesome. Check them out everywhere you get your podcasts. Like Juice said, we're going to be back next week with a brand new show. We're talking about Knock at the Cabin Door. Let's see what Shyamalan has up his sleeve. Slam your eyeballs into that. Get ready for next week's show. Until then, hit us up on all the socials. Straight Chilling Podcast. Just search that. You will definitely find us. If you do want to join in on our daily Slack channel conversations, hit us up on one of our social media outlets. Let us know you want to join. I'll send you a link so you can do so. Talk about the movie of the week, mini casts. We also trade food recipes, cute pictures of our animals, day-to-day stuff. It's a really, really great community, and we want you to join. Please do so. Until next week, as always, all you mother truckers, please keep chilling.